Opening shock and FOMO trigger intro hook. The camera cuts to a stage drenched in red light. Donald Trump, face flushed, voice cracking, hurls insult after insult into a restless crowd. His words stumble over each other, his fist pounding the podium, sweat dripping down his brow. The audience, once electrified, now shifts uncomfortably in their seats. Some clap out of habit, others glance at their phones wondering if they're witnessing strength or desperation. And then freeze. Silence. A single question hangs in the air. Why was Trump unraveling now? Why did a man who built his image on dominance seem suddenly fragile, cornered, almost afraid? Because beyond the chaos of that stage, another figure had begun to rise. A figure Trump couldn't mock into silence or bury beneath a flood of outrage. Gavin Newsom, sharp, calm, and impossible to ignore, was turning heads, commanding cameras and filling a void millions of Americans felt in their bones. Where Trump embodied fury, Newsom radiated composure. Where Trump barked, Newsom smiled. One represented the crumbling past, the other a restless future taking shape before our eyes. And yet this was no simple changing of the guard. This was a collision course, two men locked on the same horizon. What happened next would shake both of their futures and leave the entire nation holding its breath. Enter the villain, Trump, in meltdown mode. The roar of the crowd once defined Donald Trump. He thrived on their cheers, their chants, their blind loyalty echoing back at him like proof of his power. But tonight the sound is different. The words still pour out, long rambling sentences strung together with half-baked accusations. But the energy feels forced. His finger jabs the air with desperation. His voice rises and cracks as though sheer volume can disguise the hollowness beneath. He rants about conspiracies, about enemies of the people, about betrayal everywhere he looks. To some, it sounds less like confidence and more like paranoia. The reaction is swift. Headlines mock the meltdown. Trump unhinged. Tweets circulate clips of him sweating under the lights, his tie hanging loose, his insults sounding like a man yelling at ghosts. Late-night comedians seize the footage, turning his frantic tirades into punchlines, their audiences roaring with laughter. But beneath the comedy, an unease lingers. Is this the image of a leader? Or is it the portrait of a man cornered, clinging to relevance as it slips from his grasp? Every insult he hurls lands weaker than the last. Every boast more transparent than the one before. For years, Trump fed on fear and outrage. Now he is devoured by them. But while Trump screamed into the void, a new figure was quietly stealing the spotlight. Enter the hero Newsom's rise. While Trump unraveled under the heat of his own fury, Gavin Newsom appeared as if he were carved from an entirely different moment in history. He stood tall, crisp, suit, hair slicked perfectly back, every gesture deliberate. In town halls, he didn't shout. He listened. Cameras lingered on his steady expression, the kind of composure that cut through the noise like a blade. Where Trump thrived on chaos, Newsom seemed to breathe order. Where Trump spun conspiracy, Newsom laid out data, sharp and simple. And where Trump's voice wavered, Newsom's rang with practice, clarity. But it wasn't just his style. It was the energy he was summoning. College students leaned forward in their seats. Veterans stood with folded arms, nodding in agreement. Parents whispered to one another. Finally, someone who speaks like an adult. Clips of his appearances spread across TikTok and Twitter, not because they were outrageous, but because they were refreshing. Presidential, one post read, with 1 million likes attached. The calm we've been waiting for, said another. Felt bigger than a single man rising. It felt like a movement cracking through the surface, a hunger for dignity, for stability, for leadership that didn't reduce America to a spectacle of rage. Every time Trump lashed out, Newsom seemed steadier, as though the contrast was writing itself in real time. Fury versus focus, bluster versus vision, and as whispers of a future face-off began to swirl, one truth became clear. Trump wasn't the only one who saw the shift. He felt it. He feared it. And Trump wasn't about to let this challenge go unanswered. What he did next left even his allies stunned. Escalation. Trump attacks. Newsom holds steady. The first strike came in the staged form of a nickname. Trump had always relied on them. Schoolyard taunts packaged as political branding. On Truth Social, just after midnight, he raged, "Greasy Gavin, a total disaster. California is a nightmare because of him. Weak, fake, phony." The post went viral, not for its sting, but for its desperation. Within hours, a dozen more followed. Wild claims about collapsing cities, exaggerated crime rates, a California on the brink of ruin. Each message felt louder, angrier, more frantic. At rallies, the tirades grew even sharper. Trump stomped across the stage, waving his hands, his voice cracking with fury as he painted Newsom as a puppet, a fraud, a danger to America. The crowd dutifully cheered, but the energy felt thinner, rehearsed, as if even his loyalists were tiring of the routine. Meanwhile, Newsom played a different game entirely. When asked about Trump's attacks, he didn't bite. Instead, he smiled, shrugged, and delivered a polished soundbite. "I'm more interested in solving problems than trading insults." The press ate it up. Clips of his cool deflection spread across social media, where users contrasted them with Trump's late-night rants. One looks like a leader, a viral tweet read. The other looks like a bitter ex. The split in America grew sharper. Trump's base doubled down, chanting louder, angrier, unwilling to admit the cracks in their champion's armor. Independents, though, shook their heads, weary of the drama. Democrats, energized by the contrast, began to see in Newsom something they hadn't felt in years. A fighter who didn't need to shout. The stage was set for a collision. The chaos of Trump's fury clashing against the composure of Newsom's restraint. But then came the moment no one saw coming. A single exchange that flipped the narrative overnight. The turning point. The debate clash. The lights dimmed. The cameras panned, and for the first time the two men stood side by side. Trump, larger in stature, leaned forward, jaw tight, eyes darting. Newsom, slightly smaller, but perfectly composed, wore a measured smile that seemed to taunt without a word. The room buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just a debate, it was a duel, and every viewer knew it. From the first question, Trump came out swinging. He interrupted, scoffed, rolled his eyes, and jabbed his finger across the stage. His words spilled fast. Accusations stacked upon accusations. Failed policies, fake accomplishments, California in ruins. He grew redder with each sentence, his voice rising above the moderator, drowning out decorum. And then came Newsom's turn. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't jab his finger. He leaned into the microphone with a steady calm. "With all due respect, the people of America deserve better than rants and insults. They deserve answers." The audience erupted. Some gasped. Others cheered, the sound slicing through Trump's bluster like a knife. The exchange continued. Trump's interruptions turned frantic. Newsom's responses stayed sharp, rehearsed yet natural, each comeback landing with surgical precision. When Trump mocked California's economy, Newsom fired back with numbers. When Trump sneered at climate policy, Newsom pointed to disasters fueled by denial. Each time, the crowd leaned further into Newsom's corner. And then it happened, the meltdown moment. Trump, visibly rattled, began shouting incoherently, his words colliding into a jumble of grievances and half-formed insults. His face burned crimson, his hand slammed the podium. Newsom didn't even blink. He simply tilted his head, smiled faintly, and let the silence hang. The contrast was devastating. In the audience, phones lit up. Clips were already racing onto social media. Memes bloomed instantly. Trump as chaos, Newsom as calm. By the end of the night, the narrative had shifted, and everyone watching could feel it. What happened after that moment would echo far beyond the debate hall. Fallout. The ripple effect across America. By morning, the debate wasn't just news. It was everywhere. Clips of Newsom's sharpest lines dominated Twitter, stitched into TikToks, replayed on Instagram Reels with captions like, "This is how you handle a bully." Late-night hosts opened their monologues with Trump's meltdown, mocking the red face, the finger slamming, the incoherent ramble that seemed more tantrum than argument. Audiences roared with laughter, but behind the humor was something heavier. For the first time, Trump didn't look untouchable. He looked small. Cable news panels buzzed with phrases like tone shift and momentum swing. Opinion columns dissected the clash, noting how Newsom's calm poise wasn't just winning applause, it was winning imaginations. Hashtag spread while President Newsom load Trump meltdown, trending across platforms in ways that felt like cultural earthquakes for millions watching from home. It wasn't simply entertaining, it was validating. The bully who once commanded every headline was suddenly reduced to a caricature. The contrast between chaos and composure had never been clearer, and people felt the shift in their gut. Power was moving, but beyond the memes, beyond the viral clips, there was something even bigger happening beneath the surface.